Color me surprised, Muv-Luv Alternative starts off with a really solid first episode. A lot of my issues that I kind of foreseen from the PVs really did kind of get thrown to the back burner as I was watching the show, and that definitely has me excited. But this is my thoughts on the first episode of Muv-Luv Alternative, so let's jump right into it. The series opens up pretty much giving a backstory. Essentially, in 1973, apparently a whole bunch of these crafts came from the moon to the Earth, which triggered an alien invasion, which they call the beings of extraterrestrial origin and adversaries of the human race, or better put, Beta. So I'm going to call it Beta from now on because it's an extremely long name. I've made jokes in the past where some of these shows are just kind of like, what's the name of the monster? Oh, it's this. And it's like, okay, that was a really simple name. Thank you so much. But no, we're going to give it an extremely long name and then shorten it. So the Beta are invading, they're taking over the entire eastern continent, and at some point in 1998, they start invading Japan. And for this first episode, a lot of the focus is on this Sato base, which is essentially this key point in the invasion that's coming from the south of Japan all the way up to the north of Japan, that essentially is their last form of defense before the Beta will get to key places like Tokyo. So they have really strong reinforcements, huge walls, everything in place. A lot of their technology is there, all to fight off this particular invasion. And we follow Kamaki, who is this girl that recently has been transferred to there. She does have some experience in the past on the battlefield, and she's now basically there along with two other rookies. And after getting a tour of the town by a guy named Kusano, they end up having an invasion alert. Everybody's on deck. Everybody's going into the battlefield, and the Beta are surging in from the coast. And while it does seem like their process is working out really well, everybody's being evacuated into shelters, and the TSF teams are basically handling the situation pretty well, suddenly we have what they call fort-class Betas invading. And these things are these huge guys that can actually topple the walls. And they're kind of shocked by this because they have no intel on this fort type coming from the south. So their assumption is that possibly they went through the sea from Asia all the way to Japan in order to start this invasion. And not only that, but they have a laser class type that starts shooting lasers everywhere, and so things go downhill really quickly. And eventually, at some point, even Kasano himself, after taking out one of these fort classes, ends up being pretty much the entire corpse landing on him and the acids from its body just pretty much burning him alive. So we're already getting really dark. Yeah, it doesn't really end there. Full-out invasion, the walls get breached, all of these Betas start charging in, all the shelters themselves are being taken out by these soldier classes, and it pretty much forces the entire group to have to flee, as Central Command gives them the order to retreat to the Ryotsu port. And that's pretty much where we leave it. Our character that we were following most of the time, Kamaki, was told to retreat. She goes to return back to her commander, but Commander basically tells her to follow orders to stay there, and obviously it shows that she's pretty much not doing well and doing the final stand as everybody else is fleeing. And then at some point after the cast scrolls, we get a brief shot of 2001, and it has some brown eyes, brown-haired character. I don't think it's Kusano. I think it's somebody else. Opens his eyes, and I guess it's going to be a time jump next episode. But yeah, like I said, I thoroughly enjoyed this episode, a lot more than I thought I would. Yes, it is violent. Pretty much had two characters pretty much visually shown getting tore up, plenty of soldiers dying. But I think the thing that impressed me the most was just the presentation of the battle itself. Obviously, I've had my criticisms in the past with things like Schwarzenmarken and their use of CGI with the Beta monsters. It never really looked good. Yeah, granted, I'll give it this idea of having something that looks foreign that's not necessarily normal looking, but their art style never really matched the world itself, so you had this conflicting art style. Now, granted, I have a little bit of that feeling here as well, especially with the Fort class Betas, but even still then, they looked good. They actually somehow matched. A lot of the mechas themselves look very much so like they matched the art style as well, which is definitely a huge surprise, because I think I remember the ones in Schwarzenmarken being a little bit overly hyper-detailed. So again, they never matched the world itself. Also, we had some really great sound. I think the battle sound effects and everything actually really did sound good. And additionally, some really heavy rock, which I think definitely fits the setting and the action that's actually happening on the scene, which I thought was actually really a nice little addition. So yeah, while I would love to have hand-drawn 2D animation technique, we do have a show this season that will be doing that, it still worked well. And I think even much more than that, I think that it managed to pull off scale really well as well, with especially these fort types that are really huge, actually having a sense of size and scale. I mean, I've often criticized MAPPA and additionally Wit Studio for how they switched to CGI for their Titans and how that aspect sort of made them lose their scale a little bit. a lot of having these higher shots that made it to where you don't really see the scale of the characters anymore, the Titans themselves. And I think that's something that's actually portrayed really well here, especially, again, with the Fort-type betas. They felt like they were huge. The size of them and how they fell give that sense of that scale, and I think they pulled that off really well. So yeah, with that said, I'm actually pretty excited for the series. I think I have I've set my expectations a little bit. I think a lot of people have kind of encouraged me to watch the series, kind of, emphasizing the fact that it is technically supposed to be a sequel of something, but this is actually the better stories that really kick things off, and that I don't necessarily need that previous story. So I'll definitely be excited to see this show. Like I said, so far they're really kind of portraying the battles at least really well. Haven't got really too much of a sense of how it's going to do a lot of its more character-driven scenes, because obviously that's the other thing that I've been told, is that it's got a lot of character interactions that happen between the battles, and I'm hoping a lot of that stuff gets done very well as well. But yeah, with all that said, that's my thoughts on the first episode of Muv-Luv Alternative. Like I said, so far doing really well. I'm looking forward to more of it. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. If you did, leave a like down below, comment, let me know what you thought of the episode, or if you're going to check it out. Subscribe if you haven't already. Share this video if you can. Support us on Patreon if you can. And definitely stick around, as I'll be covering first impressions on all the shows for this season. And I hope you all enjoyed, and y'all take care.